Tiverton Town Council with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Councilor Lambert.
Present.
Councilor Roderick.
Present.
Councilor Durfee. Present. Councilor Boland.
Present.
Councilor Leonard.
Present.
Councilor Costa. Yes. Councilor Arruda is absent.
Tonight's consent agenda consists of the approval of the minutes of August 24th, 2009 regular council meeting, approval of executive session minutes from August 24th, 2009 council meeting, approval of special meeting and workshop on August 31st, 2009, approval of executive session minutes, a special meeting August 31st, 2009, and approval of workshop minutes March 30th, 2009. Receipt of minutes from the following boards and commissions: Arts Council, Planning Board, Open Space Commission, Building Code Board of Appeals, and the Zoning Board of Review. Correspondence received and filed. Received from Friends of Tiverton Library's Fall 2009 newsletter. Notice for new public library community workshop September 23rd. Invitation to Simply Sunday Supper September 20th. Received from City of Providence resolution recognizing September as Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month. Received from Town of Gloucester resolution urging support for Kacheri versus Salazar Supreme Court decision. Received from Town of Portsmouth resolution opposing reinstatement of toll on the Mount Hill Bridge. Received from Town of Middletown resolution to enact legislation criminalizing prostitution. Received from Laura Epke requesting council obtain report classifying financial position of town as of June 30th, 2009. Received from Treasurer DiMatteo July 09 budget review, revenue and carry forward reports. Adoption of resolution opposing binding arbitration for teacher contracts. Adoption of proclamation for Constitution Week, September 17th through 23rd. Approval of tax assessor abatements. Distribution of Pecasset Hill Handbook for review, comment, and approval at September 29th meeting. And Main Road parking input hearing tabled until additional information received. Also on the consent agenda, Board of Licensing Commissioners, Full Circle Incorporating, doing business as Seaside Gas, request tobacco dealer's license subject to meeting all legal requirements. And Crystal L. Oliveira, Common Sense, requests holiday license subject to meeting all legal requirements. Adoption of resolution appointing representatives to East Bay Energy Consortium. Gary Plunkett, voting member, Dennis Culberson, first alternate, and Olberg, second alternate. Bids and requests for proposals. DPW requests approval to solicit bids for landfill cover. Request from the DPW approval to solicit bids for hydraulic lift gate. And also from the DPW request approval to solicit bids for mower brush cutter purchase. That's tonight's consent agenda.
Make a motion that we accept the consent agenda.
I'd like to remove the matters relating to the finances and feel the fact that Mr. Town Treasurer is here. That is the 4, 3, F, and G.
And I'd like to remove number 4, since I understand we'll actually be discussing that tonight, that issue.
The adoption of the resolution?
Right, yes.
Okay.
I just combine that.
Okay, so we have a motion. Is there a second to adopt the consent agenda minus those 3 items?
Second.
Seconded. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's unanimous. So we'll move on to the letter received from Laura Epke requesting council obtain report clarifying financial position of town as of June 30th, 2009.
What I'd like to do is just take those up when the treasurer has his agenda items. So I'd just like to hold those until that time.
Okay. On the matter of the adoption of the resolution, well, I'll get, you want to take a vote to hold them items to the financial business under F2.
I'll presume that Ms. Durfee made a
F3.
motion, and I'll second her motion.
That would be good.
Okay. The motion then would state to move those two items to F3. We have a motion, a second, to move those two items to F3. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion passes. Councilor Lambert, your removal of the adoption of the resolution opposing binding arbitration for teacher contracts.
Well, I think we can move that under new business number 1, since we're going to have some related discussion about that tonight.
Yeah, well, I'm going to take that as a motion to combine that
Yes.
with G1.
I'll
Thank you.
second that motion.
Your microphone's not working. There are people here with no problems at all with hearing, and they're having trouble hearing.
Well, speaking to the mic and speak a little louder.
Right now, but
We have a motion and a second to take the item removed under consent agenda 3, consent agenda 4, adoption of resolution opposing binding arbitration for teacher contracts, and move that or combine it with G1, which is a proposed changes to Rhode Island General Law per teacher contracts. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Yes.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's unanimous. Okay, we'll now move on to our regular agenda. Tiverton Power, okay. The Tiverton Power Incorporated proposed amendment to the town zoning map continued from the August 24th council meeting, the public hearing to be continued to November 23rd.
I'll make a motion to that effect, that the matter be continued to November 23rd.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded, discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor? It's unanimous. Financial business. Councilor Roderick, discussion of handling funds relative to Bay Street cleanup.
Thank you, Mr. President. My question is regarding the funds that were received on the Bay Street settlement, as to what accounts they have been put in and what restrictions there are on those particular account, that particular account. I don't know if Mr. Gonzalo or if Mr. DiMatteo or Mr. Tights will answer that question.
If I may,
Yes.
Mr. President, with regard to what restrictions there are, you have there as a sub-item, unsealing 2 documents, which I think will, if you can do that first, I would ask for a vote to unseal the agreement between the plaintiffs and the town of Tiverton, as well as the mutual release. If you unseal it, then I can more freely answer the question.
Okay, I will make a motion that we unseal the agreement with plaintiffs in Corvella versus New England Gas and the town of Tiverton.
I'll second that motion.
And also make a motion to unseal the mutual release.
I think you do it as one motion, unseal both documents.
So moved.
All right, we have a motion and a second to unseal the agreement with the plaintiffs and the mutual release. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's unanimous.
So pursuant to the agreement, this is an agreement between the plaintiffs, negotiated through their attorneys, with the town of Tiverton, which provided, in return for the town, both participating in the settlement and agreeing to release Southern Union of any other claims that the town had against Southern Union for the pollution of the town's streets, and in return for $550,000, in return for that, also the town is accepting where parts of the town's streets are being remediated by the plaintiffs, but they're only going down 2 feet, and the pollution will remain. The town is agreeing to accept environmental land use restrictions on those properties where the pollution remains. And in return for that, The town received the sum of $550,000, which, as it says here, is to be held in a special account to be used solely to pay for costs, including engineering and testing costs associated with the investigation and removal of MGP, which for the public is manufactured gas production contamination found in the moratorium area located within the town rights-of-ways or town roads, with control of spending from such account in the sole discretion of the town council within the above parameters. All spending from such account shall be publicly disclosed in the town's annual report. So that is the requirement, that we keep it in a special account, and what the money can be spent for, the cleanup and the engineering and testing costs associated with the cleanup, which we anticipate having to do with the town roadways.
Andy, does the council need to pass a resolution directing the treasurer to establish a restricted account, like we have done, like for landfill closure, and so on and so forth?
I don't think it's necessary, but it can't hurt. It does need to be created. If it's not otherwise going to be created, a resolution to do it. The town council's already essentially agreed to create the special account by agreeing to this in the settlement. Now, we did not disclose this frankly, until the money was actually received by us, since we wanted to make sure there weren't any glitches, and at the last minute, the settlement didn't fall apart. So that's why these documents were kept confidential. And just for the record, the second document is just the release between the town of Tiverton and Southern Union, where we agree not to pursue any claims against each other. They've given up all their claims against the town, and we've given up all our claims against them. And if people are looking at it, and it seems funny that there's two actual agreements, it's the same agreement. One of them has a signature page from Southern Union, the other one has a signature page from the town.
Well, it would be, just from a record-keeping standpoint, it'd be a little simpler if there was a restricted account, then you know where the interest earned
Right.
goes, et cetera.
Oh, it does have to be a restricted account, there's no question about that.
Yeah. I will make that motion that we instruct the town treasurer to put this in a restricted account based on the agreement.
Interest bearing.
Interest bearing.
And I'll second that.
We have a motion, a second, to create a special account for the monies from the Bay Street contamination settlement to be in a restricted account, interest bearing. We have a motion, a second, discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions?
Just like voting for something that doesn't happen.
I have one question. We've had reference to the streets. I have one question as far as the Bayview Park. What are we going to do to clean that up?
I'm sorry.
The cleanup in Bayview Park, I think that
Bayview Park, okay.
Bayview Park was determined to be clean.
That's correct.
It's not what I heard.
What did you hear?
I've heard that there are contaminants in the area.
In the area is correct, but
No, I'm talking physically within the confines of Bayview Park.
Then if they are, that's part of the area, and it's going to get cleaned under the settlement with Southern Union on the...
Who do I talk to make sure this happens?
I would get together with Jim, who could probably get together with whomever it is handling the cleanup.
Okay, thank you.
We'll have to go back and look at
There's a very
it.
detailed lot-by-lot plan that has been approved by DEM, which would indicate where, if any, particular parcels, if there's any particular ones on that parcel. It's lot by lot. So it should be easy to tell if it is. Now, if you have knowledge of something that hasn't been there, I mean, there've been all the testing. If it's something that hasn't been found, then no, we don't know
No,
about it.
all I can tell you is in conversation I've had with some of the Enact people, I live just above the area, I know there was a specific area in the park that had contaminants within 2 feet of the surface. That was, again, I haven't seen the,
If that's the case, those
I
will be
thought we had a
cleaned up
report
by
that the pond was clean.
those will be cleaned up by their contractor.
We were under,
Hoffman
but,
would be the
yeah.
person that should be just checked with. I don't think there's a problem there.
well,
We have
it's-
information, I mean,
Yeah.
Bob Hoffman was the town engineer,
okay.
and he is as conversant
I'll-
with anybody.
Between Gary and myself, we'll get in touch with Jim.
Okay.
We'll make sure. Thank you.
Councilor Roderick, discussion regarding use of financial advisor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. Actually, I would like to ask if Mr. DiMatteo will come up so I can...
Good evening.
Obviously, we've had some discussion, with funds and what's going on and whatnot, and my question to you is, presently, do we have a financial advisor? Secondly, what role is that financial advisor playing in putting our funds either in CDs or special accounts and whatnot, and what type of monies we can hope to get in interest and so forth and so on? Obviously, when things are tough and money is very tight, it's very important that we get the biggest bang for our buck wherever we put it. And I'm just hoping that, in these tough times that, we're looking at every area. And so if you could enlighten us on who our financial advisor is, what role they're playing in our town finances.
Sure. Well, we lost Norm McKenzie from Citizens Bank, who was our financial advisor for many years. But we have really several advisors, Ed, if I could dwell on them. They all serve somewhat different capacities. The first advisor is, I would classify, and I do have some information more specific to this organization, is First Southwest Company. First Southwest Company provided us with assistance not only in the Pocasset bond, but also in speaking with the managing director, Maureen Gergen, and Bill Fazzoli, and Steve Massaroni. Steve Massaroni led us within the bond proposal. But they have given me a letter to share with you on how extensive their financial advisor services are. They claim to be one of the best in the area, and basically have advised us and will stand to advise us on many different aspects. However, the other advisors that we use, and there's several, it's hard to have just one. I also depend upon Municap. They're a public financing consulting group. Keenan Rice is the president of that organization, and Erasto Killaway is the person who I dialogue with. In the area of Citizens Bank, Ed, this is the cash management side of the function, the repo side, the money market, the CDs. That falls under Glenn Rowley. He's Senior Vice President of Government Banking. He also has assigned a Vice President to us called Linda Calkins. And we also use Patricia Curran of Citizens Bank for investment services in the capital markets. The Bank of New York Mellon is another one, Ed, that I turn to sometimes. Susan Calisi is Vice President of Corporate Trust Services there. Compensation planning, pension actuarial service is handled by Jeffrey Brown. He's president of the organization. We also, this year, because of GASB 45, must hire Primaris Benefit Advisors. They were with us a couple of years ago. And Parker Elmore is their president and CEO. We also have an advisor giving direction to us on our fixed assets, and that's called CBIZ Valuation Group. That's GASB 34, which we are in the process of completing. That involves Corey Doggs, a director, and Kathy Yeager. The trust also gives us risk management advice relevant to property. Sometimes I've discussed and dialogued with Charles Schwab, Ned Power, as well as the Bank Newport, Sarah Hebner. She's Vice President of Business Banking, and Mary Beth Manuel. So, Ed, there is a whole consortium of people who I dialogue with on an ongoing basis to make sure that our money and rates are being maximized. I have the list for you that I just iterated to. And Nancy, could you pass that? This is a statement for Maureen Guggenheim. She's the one at First Southwest. Let me start the other way with this one here. First Southwest, by the way, is coming before the council to explain their pricing strategy on the Pecassid bond at our next meeting. I've spoken with Maureen, and she said that she stands ready to support us for Southwest. That's the one that's coming from the left direction here. The right direction is just in this list of names and people who we use. The one coming from the left is a commitment and a statement from First Southwest about their company. They've been in business for about 65 years. The last page of that little document tells where and whom they have serviced within the area. If you go to that last page, as you can see, they have over 300 people that they have, they're advisors to, financial advisors. So I would hope that we keep this team, I call it the treasurer's team, so to speak, basically to help maximize our resources. And if you do have any questions on First Southwest Company, you'll have a chance maybe to address them to either Steve Massaroni or Maureen when they visit at the next council meeting.
Following along those lines, we have these advisors. Number one, are there costs associated with these advisors?
Some, yes. Some, yes, especially in the areas of the GASBs and the GASB 35 and GASB 45. The Citizens Bank, of course, we have to maintain certain balances, like you have to maintain your own to make sure, but we maintain certain balances. With First Southwest, they would be on a paid for service basis.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just,
Sure.
First Southwest is the only underwriter in the state of Rhode Island. Isn't that accurate?
I don't know if that's true or not.
That is true.
Okay.
Okay. So that any community, if they want to underwrite bonds in the state, that is their only choice. Other underwriters really have withdrawn on geo work. Okay. So to classify, I mean, they are the underwriters for the Rybeck issues, for several other communities. So, but as financial advisors, they would advise on bond issues alone.
Their
Now,
portfolio
if-
is much bigger, though,
Well, if
Louise.
they're engaged, and if we went out for a bid for a financial advisor, and they put one in, they would become a financial advisor, I'm sure, if they were the winning bidder. With regard to Municap, Municap does they give us the annual report in conjunction with the Starwood bonds, isn't that correct?
That is correct, but that is not the limit, though, of their servicing. According to their president,
Okay,
Keenan
but
Rice,
what else do they do for the town?
they do currently nothing for the town, but stand ready to give advice in different directions when needed.
All right, so they have not, up to this point,
No.
okay. And Bank of New York Mellon are the trustees for the Starwood bond issue, isn't that correct?
That is correct.
And that is
And
their
they're
role?
also the trustees for Ryback.
No, I understand, they're the only game in town.
Right.
So, but beyond their trust services in conjunction with the Starwood, do they render any services to the town?
Currently, no. But they are there to be called upon and used, and have offered services to us
I'm sure.
if we so desire.
I'm sure they,
But that would be at a price, I'm sure?
That would be a better price. I haven't discussed pricing with them because we had not had to go in that direction. But they are there ready to give advice.
so in answer to Ed's question on who's our financial advisor, is it Citizens?
Right now, it's really, I would classify it as First Southwest is looking to be that. And they're looking to take over and give us all kinds of different advices if we need them.
No, if I may, if I understood your statement correctly, First Southwest, as Councilman Murphy points out, is associated with bonds and bonds only. the majority of our advice comes from Citizen in a couple different ways, having to do with different instruments. And all of those costs from Citizens are covered under our normal banking relationship. We don't pay them an extra fee.
No, we don't.
Although by maintaining minimum balances,
They get paid.
they get paid.
They get paid.
They don't send us a bill, but, you know, the bankers.
So, I mean, so
And that's the way
presently...
it is with Southwest. I was a little taken aback because Madam Durfee's comment about First Southwest was the last one standing caused me a bit of angst, because when I was treasurer, there were 2 or 3 competitors, and when I think that time has passed to where there's only one left, that made me feel a little ancient. But they're the only ones left on the general obligation stuff.
So, Mr. DiMatteo, so presently, Citizens Bank is our chief
Our
financial...
chief one right now.
And I'll play Mickey the Dunce here. Tell me what role they play, how do they steer our funds? I mean, obviously, they want them in their bank, but what type of instruments are they looking at that are going to benefit the town?
Well, first of all, the cash area of cash management, our general fund is controlled through Citizens, and they have provided us what is known as a GPS system, whereby which on a daily basis, I have an opportunity to see deposits and withdrawals from all the accounts within Citizens Bank. So we have an overview of what's coming in and what's going out. Now, it gives me an opportunity with such current information, basically to make some investment decisions relevant to what we can set aside. Not everything within the general fund basically should stay there. But if we have an opportunity, they've opened up also, Ed, investment accounts at different rates for me and for the town. And basically, they have what they call investment 2 account. Basically, we've progressed as I've tried to negotiate with them based upon our balances and our excess that I'm trying to invest. So they are giving us direction in the money market area, the CD area, and the repo area. Now, also, they're providing investment services through this capital markets, Patricia Curran. Basically, she is into the bond area, the bonding process, treasury bills. She's more interested in that area. So we have an encompassed management approach to our cash. It's not just one person, one party, but we have different people to call upon to provide services to us. Did I answer your question?
Mr. President,
Yeah,
if I
yeah.
might jump in just one. When our treasurer talks about repo, he's not talking about repossession of cars.
No, that's right.
No.
It's a swap deal primarily with federal paper.
Yes, correct.
Okay. And I just have one final thing. Obviously, Citizens Bank has been a big player with us. Have we looked into other banks, local banks, i.e., Bank of America or
Well, we
Washington Trust? I mean, there are up-and-coming banks in Rhode Island which are strictly Rhode Island banks.
Bank Newport. Let's
yeah.
just run Bank Newport. Many of our, we have a lot of, quote, passbooks, the various cemeteries within the town, and I know the school department uses Bank Newport as well, and so Bank Newport is a player within this process, there's no question about it, and I think they've provided us adequate services when needed. Both the Sarah Hebner, they've established a new, what they call, Vice President of Business Banking, and but Mary Beth Manuels, by the way, is always open to my calls when I call and ask for what current rates they're offering. I know Pocasset Cemetery, when I do investing for Pocasset Cemetery and some of the other cemetery areas, what I can't, I call down there and she, provides CDs that are available to me. So we have both a local and a geographical bigger structure with Citizens Bank. So yes, it's good to have good banking relationships with banks within the Tiverton area.
Well, I would just have one question. As our town treasurer, do you think we need another financial advisor?
At this time, I don't think so. I mean, I'm getting all of the advice that I need from all these different sources of people who also offer extended services, which I haven't even tapped into. They have been providing us good service. They have been accommodating to us. The answer is no. I don't believe we do.
Part of that extensive list is a factor of how specialized people are, and part of it is, Ms. Durfee referred to, is there's been a thinning out for many years. Also, there's, if I remember right, there are some restrictions in, believe it or not, the general laws of the state of Rhode Island about what type of investments can be made, who they can be made with, so on and so forth. But when you wade through all the restrictions, there's not a whole lot of wiggle room.
Well, that's why I'm asking the question. It would seem to me that, I mean, I'm not in a position to judge whether somebody's a good treasurer or a bad treasurer, believe me.
If
I can
may-
barely
if I may-
balance a bank
excuse me.
account, but
I
a
must-
checking
I must
account.
interrupt.
Go ahead.
The treasurer is a separately elected official of the town of Tiverton. Nobody on the town council is in a position to judge whether he's good or bad. That's up to the citizens.
I didn't mean that in any
Thank
legal
you,
sense.
thank you.
My point is, we have to rely on somebody to eventually make these decisions and make the appropriate contacts to get whatever consultation you think is appropriate. And I guess my real question is, after asking that question to Phil, I mean, I don't see an argument that we need yet further another financial advisor. I mean, if somebody can suggest a bank,
Well,
fine,
I think one of
talk
the
to
things,
Phil about
Maureen
it.
Gahegan is coming down, we could, I mean, one thing to get your advice from people who are making money off you is one thing. And I think that's, as I understood, one of the issues that you really had in the back of your mind. It's all well and good to say, this bank is providing a service, but they are also making money. Do we need an independent advisor in this kind of economy? And I think that's the issue that,
Ed?
Well, Mr. Mateo, I'm assuming is supposed to be making that independent determination on behalf of the town of Tiverton.
Oh, and I agree. I think, but again, as a councilman, I just want to make sure that, you know, with the way things are financially, that we are looking at every aspect. And, you know, citizens, you know, I'm sure they've been a good partner with us, but maybe we should look and see, maybe there are other areas that can service us better and cost us less. You know, that's the only reason I brought this up. I want to make sure that right now, we're getting the biggest bang for our buck.
Advocate responsibility for the financial condition of this town. And I don't care whether you're elected, I'm elected, or not. I think we are stewards, and we're all stewards. And I don't think for 1 minute that I'm going to abdicate and just say, this is in the hands of one elected official. I think we have to look at our situation as a town. So I think the question still needs to be asked. And if Maureen is here, we know her, and we can put the question to her.
Maureen will be here possibly next week with Steve Massaroni.
Great.
But I want to assure you, Ed, not only as the town treasurer, but also as a citizen of this town, that I seek every dollar and dime that I can find for this town. And I challenge those, you know, expenses as they come across my way. I am on the phone constantly with these advisors that I presented to you on this list, and I can give you 100% assurance that we're doing our best, and I'm doing my best as well, to be the best treasurer for this town that I can be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Phil, you might as well stay there because you've got the next item on the agenda.
The health insurance return of excess, I want to make sure I'm on the right page with you.
Yep.
Jennifer Thoreau. Would you come up, please? I'd like to introduce you to Jennifer Thoreau. You may know her. She is on the library executive committee. Nice to have you tonight. Thank you for coming. She came at my request. She surprised me on September 2nd. She walked into my office and said, Mr. DiMattia, I have a gift for the town. And I said, what is that? First time we had met, by the way. I was glad to see her. She said, I have a letter to give to you, September 2nd. The Tiverton Library Board of Trustees voted at a recent meeting to return $20,000 to the town. The figures given to us by the town for health benefits was high, they stated, and they would like to return this amount of the appropriation back to the town. And so I welcomed the opportunity, and I thanked her greatly. And I think it's a great showing on the part of a department of this town to come forward with an assigned appropriation that they had been given and say, we're going to give you $20,000 back. So not only, I insisted that someone be here from the Board of Trustees so we could personally thank them for doing that. And this type of self-commitment and giving back to the town is extremely important. Thank you very much. Any question?
Now, there was no cash involved, it was a budgetary
Appropriation.
appropriation.
Correct.
It wasn't really a gift.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The next topic is the overtime. Well, I want to give accommodations to the fire chief and the police chief. We have had in this pay period somewhat of a drop. We have gone from $16,743 in overtime pay down to $12,666, a drop of over $4,000 in overtime. So I commend the fire department for doing that, and the police department. We had an $117,000 position, and this pay period, we dropped that to $4,602, a drop of $3,500. So Mr. Gonzalo was somewhat on target when he addressed Jay's commitment. I still would like to have, overtime down even further. It's not an acceptable amount to have, but if it is on the way down, then Jay, I think it's establishing somewhat of a trend, which is what you tried to ascertain at the last meeting. So once again, we are on the downward slope, but we're still spending, if we look at what has been spent to date, and this is what bothers me, not that the trend is a little bit down. The trend right now that gives us a position for the police department of $24,698 for this fiscal year. We're at a 23.3% of budget, and the fire department has spent $86,598 and is at 38.5% of budget. Both have aggregating to $111,296.
Mr. President, if I might ask a question. With these numbers, Phil, have you taken into account the encumbrances that I indicated at the last meeting?
No. This is straight off of the payroll report, which I received for each pay period.
Okay, well, there is a $3,700 in the police department. There is a $3,700 encumbrance that does not have an impact on this year's budget. And as I mentioned at the previous meeting, there is a $5,000 grant that we will be receiving for overtime for speed monitoring, which will lower that. So the number will actually be lowered to somewhere around 16,000. In the fire department, there was a $10,000 encumbrance, which would lower their overtime impact this year to $76,000.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a comment if I could. The fact that the money is an encumbrance certainly has a major bearing on fiscal year accounting, but it doesn't alter the fact that we spend a lot of money in the fire department and the police department for overtime. Now, part of that is just a fact of life. The emergency services have emergencies they have to deal with. Emergencies don't always look at the clock that occurred during the main parts of town, the day shift. So that's a fact of life. I think that looking at a broader basis, we have, on an overtime basis, we have a problem, not of our making, and that's called minimum manning. No matter how hard Mr. Gonzalo and the chief of both departments work, we have to deal with minimum manning. Now we have an opportunity with collective bargaining. Maybe we can address that, I don't know. But on the other side of that, if indeed we can't address it, I have a longer term concern in that we need to give Mr. Gonzalo a realistic budget. Because what happens, to his credit, he tries to keep it tight. To the two department heads, they try to keep it tight. Then, through a variety of events, we spend overtime. What happens is then we have to start robbing other accounts. So one way or the other, we need to address it. We either need to come up with some innovative way to approach minimum manning, or we need to face reality and start giving a realistic overtime budget so we don't put Mr. Gonzalo in the position of constantly having to decide which fund does he raid to pay for it. Because if there's a fire, he can't say don't go.
Can I ask the town treasurer, can I ask you what the point is? Last month, we discussed the overtime. People said the same thing. We've been struggling with overtime for 30 years. This month, we hear the same thing. What's the point of this?
Point is simple, Louise. We have to monitor this very closely for the full 12 months of the year.
Let me assure you, Mr. Treasurer, that when we get our monthly reports, when they are on time, every single council member looks at those monthly reports. And we, too, look at our overtime as well as other accounts that are perhaps in excess. But let me ask you a question. Friday morning, or early Saturday morning, the fire chief at 2 o'clock in the morning calls the administrator. And he says there's a fire at the Bourne Mill. Now, is the administrator at 2 o'clock say, oh, wait a minute, don't fight that fire. I don't want you to spend any overtime. In fact, let it burn. Okay?
Good interpretation.
No, I'm not being facetious. But I have to say, those are the kind of decisions, and I'm sure when the fire chief calls, it's all hands on deck. You know what? Next month, but please don't come back here with the overtime. I'm sure we'll see a spike in that overtime, both in the fire and in the police. And every single member of this council has a say about the overtime, etc. I don't think we need your taking up our time every month on this issue when we know what the town administrator is doing, what our union negotiations are at, and the problems we face as a town.
I disagree with you 100%.
I'm sure you do.
I was elected by this town basically to act in a capacity separate from the town council.
Yep.
And I will act in any way that I feel that is any derogatory way that this town is affected in any manner or shape. No one is going to muzzle this treasurer of this town.
I don't think it was an intent to do that.
Well,
Phil.
I heard that.
I think, Phil,
I
I
heard
think you're
that,
taking
Donald.
this wrong. I think the point of the matter is, we all realize overtime is a major issue and a problem. With every budget we have faced, overtime is an issue. We've discussed it with budget committees, we discuss it all the time at the financial town meeting, whether or not the overtime accounts are adequate for what we have to do, or currently under collective bargaining. These numbers to come here and show us every month, and maybe it is a good thing, because maybe then people are going to see that this is a number that's under the control of collective bargaining and not under the control of a budget committee who can set a number and say, stay to this number. It doesn't happen.
It's a difficult-
We are probably going to exceed the overtime number, because I think they were told going into this that the overtime number was insufficient to cover what the expenses would be based on what we have to have on every shift. And that becomes the issue. And I think maybe the only thing this is doing is bringing it to the forefront that every month people are going to hear the same thing and get to hear the same answers from both sides. But we do understand that the numbers are higher than they should be for that, but are there other accounts that fall in the same category?
I agree with you, Donald, but one of the questions which Jay Lambert asked at the last meeting was, is this a trend or isn't it a trend? And my goal is to define to him that it is not a trend right now, that there has been a little slippage to our benefit in the number of dollars being spent in overtime, and that is the extent of it. It was not meant to bore anybody on the council, but you will see numbers from me when I feel that they are necessary to present to this council, Ms. Durfee.
Yeah,
Enough.
I don't think, I just want to add, though, that I don't think that Mr. DiMatteo is responsible for decisions we made, some of which are politically influenced, in coming up with budget numbers. I think, Phil, if I look at it, it's an issue of your discretion.
Thank
What
you.
you feel that you have a responsibility to bring to our attention.
Thank you.
We may disagree, but I don't think, with all due respect, Ms. Durfee, that we should, I think we should be cautious about raising that issue. I'd hate to have a public servant being reluctant to raise the issue. And I think Mr. DiMatteo, at least from the way he was presenting his comments, may have been really trying to respond to an issue that I raised. I mean, the truth is, this overtime that we've budgeted is looking more and more unrealistic. I mean, we might as well face reality. Let's not blame Phil.
No one's blaming. No one's blaming Phil. The point of the matter was.
I know, but I don't want,
Yeah.
I don't want
I
any,
mean, but every month, do we listen to the overtime?
No. I understand
I mean, really.
think I understand what Mr. DiMatteo was trying to do tonight, and that was, I did leave a question outstanding at the last meeting was, is this becoming a trend? Mr. Gonzalo's response, as I recall, was you didn't believe so, and we dropped it at that. If Mr. DiMatteo felt that he had to readdress the issue today, I'm not going to second guess him on that.
And I might add, Mr. President, that under the town charter, paragraph under section 602A2, the treasurer is specifically charged, and I quote, monitoring the spending by all departments, boards, and commissions of the town to ensure that the budget approved at the financial town meeting is not exceeded. And I differ with Ms. Durfee vigorously. I want to be informed by as many different sources as I can get, because it's important. And maybe if we talk about overtime, we will eventually do something. And frankly, I think the solution is we've got to pass a more realistic budget. I don't think we're going to wave any magic wand, and nobody's suggesting that anybody's going to call and say, don't fight the fire. That was not particularly meaningful. So,
Well, can I just respond to you, Mr. Leonard, my dear Mr. Leonard? And that is that when we get our reports in a timely manner, this is our first report in July. We don't have August, it's the middle of September, and we don't, so all of us read. I read these things very avidly as soon as I get them, quite frankly. And when I'm 6 weeks behind, we're almost, the next report, we'll have a quarter of the year done, and all we have is July. So that's the way we are kept informed. And I don't even understand why we don't have August.
Thank you, Mr. President. Deb Polish. I just have a quick follow-up question, just so I understand. Mr. Gonzalo said that these year-to-date numbers, in fact, include encumbrances. Yes?
I asked if the encumbrances,
We're in these year-to-date paid amounts, and they are. They're
No,
paid, but
no.
they're not part of the 2010 budget.
that's what I asked.
So these calculations are wrong. 23.3%, 38.5% is wrong. If I do it quick, subtracting your numbers, it's 20%, it's 32%. So I would just ask, if we are going to be looking at a percent of budget, that we try to get the right numbers, that we back out those encumbrances, because it does make it hard for us to understand when we're trying to look at them.
Thank you, Mr. Matea.
I have some questions on the July report. But
Go ahead.
okay. With regard to abatements, I know it, the early, because we did not budget anything for
Let me get, excuse me, let me get my report.
Okay. The reason why we asked this question on abatements is that in a reval year, there will be abatements,
Yes.
and there are abatements. Every single month, we look at them, and we say, yes. That means the effect of that is that monies that we depended upon will not come through.
Right.
Okay. Now, as I look at your report, you have charged abatements first to the tax assessors.
That's where Mr. Gonzalo and I had agreed initially that
Okay.
the expenses would be represented.
All right, and then you credit abatement offset 8,000 in the treasurer's report.
Right.
That has the effect of wiping out the debit. And why, I mean, the point of the matter was that we need to keep track of the abatements because we need to cover those.
We have, Ms. Durfee, to answer your question, we have spent a lot of time discussing how it should be represented. We have, Jim and I have talked about representing this in the fashion that you wish. We have also consulted with our auditors how best to represent this to the general public. And we are, quote, right now, we're not in agreement. Mr. Gonzalo and I, still a little bit, this is the first time we have done this type of entry. And even the auditors are questioning us to represent it in this fashion.
Well, this is
Because
not
it's an
right.
unspent amount. It's an unspent amount. I mean, we didn't budget it, and it was, and it's
Right.
there.
I'm not quarreling with what you did with, but I am quarreling with the abatement offset. That's not the right entry for that. So I would suggest you go back to the auditors and say that has the effect of neutralizing it, and that's not, it's zeroed out, exactly, Joanne.
Jim's intention was to capture this, from what I can, and he can speak for himself, basically on a quarterly basis, to capture it during the quarter, and then basically to redistribute it on a quarterly basis when at the end of the quarter. We haven't reached the end of the quarter, and so therefore we're not in the process. Is this how it is to be represented on an ongoing basis until we come up with an agreement between
Well, you
Jim
agree
and I?
this is not right.
No, it's not done before. The auditors looked at me and frowned. You know, you can't do something like this. In fact, Paul Dancero is here tonight, basically to maybe explain, maybe better than I, relevant to what the difficulty is in so representing this to to the general public.
Well, I understand, but how you did it is absolutely,
It's a convenient way to give you, Louise, what you wished.
no.
That's what it is.
Look,
That's what it is.
Well, it would be the convenient way to give us what we needed if it was kept as an expense.
It's handled in a fictitious way because it is a fictitious number, so to speak, because it has not been budgeted.
But it's not a fictitious number. We give abatements, that's a loss of anticipated revenues, okay? When we suffer a loss of anticipated revenues, that means something else has to offset in the budget. Either we're gonna, generate some income we didn't anticipate, or some numbers will be higher there, and it might offset that, or at the end of the year, we have less than we anticipate, and the general fund once again takes a hit because we didn't cover it. I think to say that there's an offset.
Donald, let me do
No,
this
all I'm
for
saying
you.
is.
Now, I want to bring forth at this time the expert. The expert is a partner of Poirier, Pomerlee and Associates. Would you come forward, Paul?
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Paul Dancer. I'm a partner with the accounting firm of Pomerlee, Poirier and Associates, and we were engaged to do the audit for fiscal year ended 6/30/09. And Mr. DiMattia has asked me to come here tonight to answer any questions that you guys may have
Okay, now-
regarding the.
Well, you're hearing one.
statements.
That's a big question. How should that be handled?
Well, as Mr. Boland said, abatements. Abatements are not part of revenue. You may make an assessment of $40 million on property taxes, but then you decide that you're going to have $400,000 in abatements for the year. Now, the abatements aren't collected money, so they're not recognized revenue. They don't come into your general fund. They don't get recognized as revenue at any time during the year.
but are they an offset to revenue?
No, they're not an offset to revenue either because you never recognize them. So you may assess
recognized it-
someone.
Paul, you recognize it on the taxes collected. When you set the levy, you assume all that money will come in. I mean, okay?
Yeah.
And then as you then say, well, we're not going to collect this because we give an abatement of X.
Mhm.
And every month, we give some abatements.
Yes.
Okay. So here, we're looking at a schedule where the abatements have been expensed, which we're keeping track of, that's okay. And then we credit an account showing that year-to-date credit of an offsetting amount. That makes no sense.
Yeah, well, an abatement would be, if I'm assessed $2,000 on my property taxes, and I complain and say, oh, I should be only assessed $1,500.
Right.
And I don't pay that money, I don't pay that $2,000 until I receive my abatement. There was no income recognized because I never paid my $2,000 property tax assessment. So when you assess someone on the property taxes, you recognize a receivable when you make your assessment, and you defer the $40 million, whatever the assessment is. And you don't recognize revenue until the payment is made on that property tax. That's when you realize income coming in and you recognize revenue. We remove the receivable, we remove the deferred revenue, we'll debit cash, and we'll credit revenue for the year. So if you give me an abatement and I've never paid that $2,000 in taxes, you've never recognized any revenue during that. So you're correct, there's no debit to an expense when there's an abatement.
But somehow or other, it has to be shown what the abatement was, so that you could reconcile at the end of the period, which is the year,
Yes.
that we were supposed to generate, $40 million. If we gave $1 million in abatements, we're only going to get 39. So there has to be some way to reconcile that, because that takes the whole system and puts it kind of awry at the end of the year. You're taking the money from somewhere to budget what the budgeted expenses were, so it's usually coming from the general fund. It's the reserve that's there to cover the expense. But you can't show it, we need to show it in a report that something wasn't paid, but we can't show it again in here that has been credited to take it off the book. So I think
No,
it's...
sounds great.
Oh, the entry would be to credit your receivable, if you issue, and this is the journal entry that is made when abatement is processed. You would reduce the receivable, I don't owe that extra $500 on my taxes anymore, and that deferred revenue that you recognize at the beginning of the year, because
So
it's
the-
deferred until someone pays it.
Okay, no, but if, when I said to you, would you then reduce your anticipated revenue, which is tantamount in our case to the levy, the financial town meeting?
Yeah.
Because you're not gonna get it, as Donald said, you're not gonna get $100,000, let's say,
Yeah.
okay? So you expense it and you reduce your are you saying you would reduce your anticipated revenue, tax receipts by that amount?
Well, you don't expense it, it's just a balance sheet item, because that levy sits on the balance sheet. Until you collect it, you haven't turned that into an asset or a revenue source yet. So when the entry is made, it just reduces your receivable, and it reduces the deferred revenue that you anticipated to get in the future when I pay my taxes.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
Okay.
So there's no-
Have you looked at these reports?
I'm not sure which ones you have.
This is the
These
one.
are the monthly
Oh, these
reports.
are-
All right,
Yeah.
if I could just ask just a quick question, okay, and I think it's what Ms. Durfee is trying to get to also. We have a budget that is set, and it says, just to pick a number, it says $40 million. And it's split among all the different accounts and so forth and so on. Through abatements, we're reducing that amount in total of what we're going to get. So we need to show where that's gone, and then if in turn we're going to take it from somewhere else in order to balance it, it usually comes from the general fund at the end of the year if we have to. And I think and I'll only speak for myself, but I think what we're looking for is a report that says anticipated revenue based on, under levy and everything was 40 million. Abatements so far have been 500,000. So now we've got 39.5 million, okay? Right now, this shows us that we have 40 million, we lost 500,000, so to speak, and then it's back in, balancing out. So in essence, it's still, on the book, shows 40 million, it's a wash, and it's not a wash.
It's like a net zero right here.
Yeah, I know what
He's
you mean.
expensing it, okay, and
Yeah.
then he's crediting it. It's a zero.
Yeah,
But in fact, it's not. It's an expense. It wouldn't be any different than if we were buying $100,000 worth of stamps every month, okay? That money is there, and it's being expended. Those abatements have not been appropriated.
Yeah, I know, they just have a P&L.
I think maybe to resolve this, maybe you could guide the treasurer with regard to how to handle this.
Yeah, well, it's nothing that any other town doesn't face, but
Exactly.
it's all part of your budgetary process. But for generally accepted accounting principles, it's not an expense on your profit and loss statement, because
Understand.
an unrealized revenue is not a
In
reduction in revenue.
in other years, there's been a number to offset abatement, so you had an account
Right.
from which you could deduct, because an amount was set aside for abatements.
Right.
This particular year, that amount is zero.
Yeah.
So therefore,
It's a negative.
it creates a new situation. In the
But
past...
last year, we had uncollected taxes, and 200 and some odd thousand. 243, right, and we could use that as an offset. So it's a problem this year.
May I
So it- we really-
ask a question? Rather than get involved in the complexity of working with these two segments of the financials, wouldn't it just be a lot simpler? And I know I'm being silly, accountants don't like simple, but wouldn't it just be a lot simpler if every month we just tallied up how much abatements we have year-to-date, and then kind of keep track of that and not worry about journal entries, debits, credits, offsets, so on
Balance
and
sheets.
so forth?
I'll go for that.
I'll go for that, too.
Then Jim can tell us, okay, guys, here's where we're at, and here's my proposal. I'm gonna borrow, and I'm not gonna borrow, I'm gonna have to draw money from wherever he sees fit to offset that.
Well, we got two issues here, because one is there was an anticipation to offset with uncollected taxes. So is there a way to track the uncollected taxes? This is a question more for you, Jim, than for the accountant, is if we've budgeted to have one offset the other, then we need to be tracking, the payments of uncollected taxes from the previous year, and then deducting out our abatements this year from that, and keeping them separate in some accounting fashion, instead of it just coming in and going into the general fund as a collection, because it was anticipated to be used against that. So maybe we need to create, a system, and it can be a fairly simplified system. I think we can tell when we got a payment, on last year's
When
taxes.
this started out, we just wanted to keep track of how much was being abated.
Yeah.
Okay, but when we get this report, it shows an offsetting credit to an account showing money's in, and that doesn't work either.
Yeah, but-
Through your,
But don't, we just got the auditor to agree on video that he was by a simple method.
Making journal entries into the financial records that are not part of the financial documentation here that we have, not part of what's going to be in your financial statements. Because these entries, if you make an abatement entry to this, we're going to have to reverse it because it's not generally accepted accounting principles to do that. So, you could use your Opal system, which is your collector's software. That does generate monthly reports that show what was abated, what was refunded, what your ending uncollected balances are. Those offer that also.
Okay, well, maybe you could advise the treasurer how to get us the proper information.
The tax assessor issues a report on a regular basis as to the accumulated abatements that we can certainly distribute to the council. But when we make up the money, that's going to be a different story. We're going to have to somehow report how we're making up this money. My thought was probably a one-sided entry initially. And I know that at the end of the year, you're going to come in and you're going to straighten all this stuff out. But we need a method during the year that we can report on this. And then at the end of the year, hopefully it's going to wash. I'm going to find enough money to cover these abatements.
Yeah, you're going to reduce other accounts.
And whatever else the governor wants to take.
So it sounds like the simple report already exists. that
Yes,
we
it's
just have to
complicated.
just
Yeah, but
distribute.
it's another report, and I have no way of reporting to you against that, other than creating another report for you.
I think it should be part of the financial reporting process somehow. If it means generating fake accounts of some sort, you're gonna be creative. Find an account that you can charge abatements to, simply, and then you need something to offset that. It should be another phony account of some sort.
No, it wouldn't be offset until the end of the year when Jim
It needs to be,
deducts
right,
other
it
accounts
needs
to balance
be-
it out.
It needs to be a running total, but the point is, it should not be, the abatement should not have an effect on our other accounts, because it should be looked at and viewed as we got to keep track of uncollected from last year, because it was decided that the uncollectibles would offset the abatements.
No,
So,
when the budget committee came out, correct me if I'm wrong, they said the uncollected taxes, which we have always budgeted, at least a portion, would be offset by the uncollected taxes from past years.
right.
But the abatements were left out there as, hey, figure it out.
So we will be deducting from accounts.
Yes.
I think that statement went, the uncollected taxes would be offset by prior years' collected taxes, not
Right.
uncollected.
Right, yeah, you're absolutely right, yes.
You always collect from prior years and it'll help
Exactly.
offset the
Yeah.
uncollected.
But
Yeah,
abatements,
yeah.
you agree, were left as you figure it out.
That's right, they were not
Okay.
Okay,
budgeted.
so, okay, I guess we're back where we started, which is, we need some way to keep track of this, because the money will not be coming in to cover our expenditures on a monthly basis,
Yes.
okay?
Yeah, but as auditors, we can't see it as an entry in the financial records because it doesn't belong there. It's not part of your
Yeah.
financial
it's a reporting situation, not a bookkeeping situation.
Yeah.
And so it shouldn't, it has to appear on a different report and not on the budget report, because, well, if it does appear, it can show as a line as abatements, but it can't show as being taken as something else, and they're just gonna be somewhere in negative of that amount.
Yeah, it's an
That has to be
internal-
made up.
It's an internal control document, not part of the financials.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Before we leave, looking over the revenue report for July, there was nothing reported for beach revenues. And why is that?
Beach revenues have not been reported usually on a monthly basis. Usually, there has been a wait. In fact, last year, there was a wait until the beginning of the year when beach revenues were shown. We now have closed out the beaches and their activities. We will now bring the revenue into the income statement.
But shouldn't that, the beaches were open for 2 months prior to the time we get this report? What happens to that cash in that interim period, 2-month period? Is it finding its way into the treasurer's office, or?
It's finding its way into the bank, first of all. And
Well-
from the bank statements, we're taking that money and we're putting it into the correct year at the end of the year. Revenue received in, let's say, I'll call it the May and June, virtually will go into the 2009 revenue. Revenue received subsequent to July 1st will be going into future months, or the next month or whatever. So we will clean that up. It's not the process. We're still working at year end. And so let me want to,
In the month of July,
yes.
where does the money go?
The money goes into Bank Newport, and then from Bank Newport,
Then why doesn't
once we get our statements, we just got our statements, by the way, for the month of August. It just came in.
What about
So
July?
July hasn't been put in yet, according to this. We're talking about $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000. We're not talking about hundreds of thousands. When August is issued, I guarantee you that money will be in.
Well-
Last year wasn't put in, as I said, until at least December. Hopefully, we've moved up that timetable, and you'll see revenues much sooner. We now have closed the beaches out. We will now close out that book, or the amount within the book, and bring it forward. We don't have to bring it forward each and every month. I mean, if you're tracking revenue by month, this is not the place to look for it. This is a small pittance. With $4,000 or $3,000, whatever Grinnell makes, we will bring that forward. We're in the process of so doing that.
Well, it would seem to me that if it's in the town's accounts in July, it should be on our statements. Now, I mean, that's fairly simple.
I'll be short, I promise. This is getting lengthy. Laura Epke. On the July 31st reports, if I look at the bottom line of the budget report on the last page, page 18, and I look at the last line of the revenue report, the totals, it seems to me, if I'm not mistaken, these are budget to actual reports. You want to track what's been spent versus what you budgeted, and what's been collected versus what you budgeted, correct? I mean, these are not my reports, I'm looking at them, but that's how, so, at the financial town meeting, we pass a balanced budget. Now, I see that there's been some manual changes here, but to me, the bottom line, what you estimate for your revenue has to match what you estimate for your expenses. And it doesn't any longer.
Laura, no, it doesn't, and it never has been, Laura. Each year, what we haven't recognized is basically the rounding factor. which has basically been with us since the conception of tax payments. Tonight, I brought with me, and hopefully here's Mr. Karen. Mr. Karen is here, basically to explain that more specifically to you on that issue of revenue. What we have done for the first time this year, Mr. Karen has brought forward the revenue and will explain as to what the issues have been in the past, what they are today, and why revenue and expenses do not have to match. But before I do that, what I'd like to, before bringing Mr. Karen up for a minute, what I'd like to do is, if I could, with your indulgence, Mr. Boland, is to address the issue of Laurevke's letter before Paul Dancero leaves. Basically, let me see if I can respond to your June 30th letter.
Can I just, so...
Well,
okay.
I'm going back on June 30th, that's where I'm going right now.
Okay, so we're done with the July 31st?
Yes,
report.
No, we're not done.
No, Mr. Karen
Okay.
will explain it when this
Okay.
comes up. On August 24th, at the last town council meeting, I presented revenue and the expense report for June 30th, 2009. I indicated when presenting this report that it did not represent a complete report because our audit has not been completed by the town's audit firm, Pomley, Poirier & Associates, certified public accountants. Following the meeting on August 24th, I contacted Paul Dancero, CPA, and partner of Pomley, Poirier & Associates, and asked what our position was relevant to completing the audit, so that I might bring the financial position of the town of Tiverton as of June 30th to the town council and taxpayers of Tiverton. On September 2nd, Paul Dancero sent me an updated schedule which identified a list of completed items of the audit, as well as target dates of uncompleted items that would be necessary to complete in an efficient and timely manner. I have a copy of this letter. I have a copy of this letter here and schedule with these target dates and completed items, which should have been emailed to the town council by Mr. Gonzalo, town administrator, at my request. If any of the council members or the general public in attendance at this meeting wish to see this schedule, they're welcome to see it. I have brought extra copies for distribution. Planning of the audit, let me assure you, started on June 19th, well in advance of June 30th. Target dates were budgeted, which would result in expending more than 465 hours of audit work in the town and at the school department. These were hours agreed upon within the contract between the town council and Pomley, Poirier & Associates. On July 27th, at the town council meeting, the town council approved the audit contract of Pomley, Poirier & Associates, and on July 30th, Mr. Gonzalo, town administrator, accepted and signed the contract. Within this contract, on page 11, there is a projected audit timetable for the town and the school audit, referencing the start date of test work up until the final audit report is delivered and the management letter is completed on December 31st. The cost of this audit is based upon 465 hours of work, or approximately $33,150, almost split between the school department and the town. If this audit was to be completed in half the time, 3 months, not 6 months, then the cost would have been at least $70,000 or more. This would not be cost effective. I have brought copies of this audit contract for the town council to reference and extra copies for people in attendance. Now, believing the fact that I might be behind the ball, I contacted the Auditor General and several of my associates in other towns. They assured me, Phil, we are far from completed of our audit, and we are not confident and we're not assured within our towns of the final position as of 6/30/09. Hopefully, Paul Dancero might expend some more time if you have a question on that, but my position is this. As the June 30th publication which you received will not be altered or changed until such time that the audit is complete, and we have followed generally accepted accounting principles in the delivery of this report. Thank you.
I don't want to go, but I'll defer to first before I lose my temper.
Mr. President, enough. Now, can we move on to do the business of the council rather than to micromanage a separate elected office?
No.
And
Yeah.
Ms.
I-
Durfee,
that's
Ms.
a
Durfee,
question
excuse me. I believe I have the floor.
You do.
We've listened. People are starting to doze off. There's important matters coming, and I, for one, would like to move ahead, and I believe it's rather out of order for members of the audience to be intervening in what is beginning to look like a rerun of last November's election, if I may be so bold. So can we move along?
Well, I think, I'm going to allow the citizens to ask questions, about the finances of this town, and I'm not going to stop them. I don't think anybody's asked any inappropriate questions of Mr. DiMatteo, and I'm not going to stop them from asking whatever questions they might have. Hopefully, they get answered, and the thing ends.
Well, the council certainly might, according to charter, not question the treasurer, but certainly as a taxpayer elected official, or elected someone who voted in the election, I certainly have the right. I'm a little concerned, Mr. President, that I'm hearing we don't know what our numbers are until the audit is complete. I'm not questioning how long it takes. I'm sure it does take 6 months. I'm a certified public accountant. I'm a certified internal auditor. I've spent many, many years doing exactly what they do for not-for-profits businesses and for municipalities and schools. I'm not questioning how long it takes. What I'm concerned about is I'm hearing we don't have financial numbers. We don't have good numbers until our auditors come in and tell us what they are. And that does concern me, that we have to wait. That your job as an external auditor, you're an independent auditor, is not to come in and make the numbers. Your job is to come in and simply verify that internal controls are in place, that you're following GASB standards, and that the numbers materially represent what we give them. They audit the numbers we give them. It's not their job to make them up. So I'm a little concerned, not with how long it's taking. I absolutely agree with Mr. DiMatteo. It should take 6 months. What I'm questioning is what kind of financial controls do we have in place that we don't know what the numbers are for 6 months? That's my concern, and that's where I'm coming from. That, we talked about getting better reporting, but yet we're still using the same reporting. But I would definitely question the fact that we are relying on our independent auditors to make up our numbers for us.
The other, I would like to also say in response is, I didn't ask for the audited numbers. We all know, we've been here, they come in late December or early January. What I asked for, based upon the revenue report, based upon the expenditure report, where did we come out roughly for the year in our unrestricted surplus? Based upon those two reports that were before us. You've changed the questions. You tried that the night of the prior meeting to make it an audit question. That's not what I asked. What is our unrestricted? How much did we eat into it, or did we add to it? You gave some information that I said was absolutely incorrect. My question was, we have a rainy day fund. Did we add to it, or did we deplete it further? Based upon those two reports, not the audited figures. I'm not talking to you, Mr. Chair, I'm talking to the town treasurer. So don't try to misinterpret my question and drag Mr. Dancero here for a meeting which is totally unnecessary. My question was, and you reported, we returned approximately $752,000 to the general fund. And I said, that is impossible. The school budget stays with the school. The carryovers are not accounted for. I went to the town administrator the day after out of frustration, and I said, Jim, what are your figures on this? And in 15 minutes, I had my answer, and it didn't involve getting an audit. He said, these are my figures. The school balance stays the way it is. The carryovers, obviously, they are not added to the, and he gave me a figure. And that took about 20 minutes. 2 weeks later, at this particular meeting, you come before us with our auditors saying, and going through the process of the audit. That was not even the question. Of course those numbers, those transactions are subject to an audit. But how did we make out? That was the issue, and you can't answer it to this day, and you haven't even responded to Laura Epke's letter.
Yes, I have. I disagree with you. What I'm telling you is this: the numbers that you see are not relevant to generally accepted accounting principles. We're in the process of completing many parts to determine whether a deficit position exists or not. I can tell you what, we've paid all of our payrolls. We have paid all of the payrolls of the school department. We have positive cash flows within our bank. That's the extent that I can tell you. There are schedules that Mr. Dansereau's team, when they come in here, let me finish, Louise, that Mr. Dansereau's team completes for this town at the end of the year for us to get a better picture. This is not a matter of auditing numbers or testing only. They're far extensive reports that they perform for us, and we work with them to get that job done.
Mr. Karen.
My name is Jeff Karen. I'm the chairman of the Tiverton Budget Committee. And last summer, toward the end of last summer, maybe it was September at this time, I had asked the treasurer, I believe, about that I had asked the then treasurer, who was Mr. Gonzalo at that time, about this very number, the unrestricted general fund, that balance, that critical, where are we at kind of number that Ms. Durfee speaks about. And I continued to ask for that number. I got some from verbiage, but I never really got a number. And I can show emails now from Mr. Gonzalo that I believe were sent sometime around Thanksgiving to me, which said that myself, and I became the chairman of the Budget Committee, would get those numbers when the audit report was available after the first of the year. And I did not get those numbers until after the first of the year. And I'm the chairman of the Budget Committee. So you asked for those numbers very early, Ms. Durfee, and I had to wait until the first of the year, and I was told by Mr. Gonzalo last year.
I could figure out my own answer, I mean, as it turned out, and you could too. Based upon those two reports, how do we make out? It's not rocket science. It was basically, with all the cuts that we took, the cuts in the budget, did it work? I think we'll see. But they were tentative, estimated numbers of how we did in the course of the year.
And the official numbers will come after the first of the year. That's what I was told last January.
I didn't ask for official numbers, Jeff. You weren't here at the meeting, and I don't know if you watched the tape of the meeting. I said, based upon these two reports, how did we do? And basically, I got my answer truly within about 15 minutes, so.
Well, Mr. President, if I may, again, I'm going to resort to underhanded techniques and refer to the town charter where it says 602A1, assuring compliance with all applicable accounting standards and requirements. And I side with Mr. Gonzalo when he was treasurer. I side with Ms. Mello when she was treasurer. I side with myself when I was treasurer, and I side with Mr. Gutierrez. It is folly to give out unaudited numbers, because what happens is they come back and haunt you. And your famous 15-minute calculation has value. It does have value. In the right hands, they can become terribly destructive in the wrong hands, and once they get out, they're very difficult to get back. I maintain that by charter, and I don't think that this was really an agenda item tonight, so I don't know where we stand on open meeting laws, but by charter, Mr. Gonzalo last year and Mr. DiMatteo this year are within their rights to give an answer, and that's the answer, whether we like it or not.
That we were 752K to the unrestricted fund, that's his answer.
And
you
that's
accept
his
that?
prerogative. I'm not commenting whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent. All I'm saying is I'm reading the charter, and according to the charter, Mr. Gonzalo before him and Mr. DiMatteo this year is correct in their position. I know the charter is sometimes an inconvenient document.
Okay. Moving on, item C, the Budget Committee fiscal year 2010 revenue expenditure reconciliation.
With thanks to our auditor.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Karen?
Sure. Thank you, Jeff Karen, the chairman of the committee. Partially at the request of the treasurer and partially because I should have done it right after the FTM, but was so jubilant it was over, I didn't. I put together a brief, what I'm going to call reconciliation. I'm not quite sure exactly what the right name is for it, of how the levy was calculated and the anticipated revenues that the Budget Committee used to get there. Specifically, I'd like to tell a little story. When we came to down the stretch on the Budget Committee in March, something wrong? When we came down the stretch, I had done some legwork in the computer and came to a meeting with what I thought were the final numbers. And the Budget Committee members pointed out to me that I had used a wrong revenue report to generate those numbers. So, real time, we took about 5 minutes. Mr. Perry and I took about 5 minutes, and we calculated the, reworked the numbers to reflect the correct revenue report, the most recent. In doing that, there was documentation of that real-time calculation was not as complete as perhaps other things were documented. So, as I said, I probably should have done that right after the FTM, done a clean sheet to show it. But I did it more recently, and it's my understanding that the treasurer supplied this as some backup to this item tonight, so I only didn't bring copies of it. But if, essentially what that shows is the expenditures as dictated from the certified docket, minus all the anticipated revenues, including the difference as changed by the FTM for the school reimbursement, which then goes on and calculates the levy. And what I did was I put on this, on that sheet, which was the final levy calculation, the lower limit and the upper limit of the vote. And sure enough, the number that I was trying to get to, which was the 32,105,344 number, fell right out of the math. And when I saw the levy vote was plus or minus 100K on that, I knew it was exact. Below that, I took the certifications that were provided from the assessor's office, and I simply wrote down what the levy was, and bingo, the amount due to the levy is between the range. So everything is self-consistent. There was one number in particular which was $500 and some odd $1,000, $529,244, which is that town clerk's office catch-all, sort of the licenses and fees. I think traditionally that had often been about a $700,000 number. And that calculation, I also, obviously double-checked and whatnot, and I can provide the specifics on those totals that add up to that. However, I will say that they come straight out of the March 18th report. One will notice in the backup that what I did was I put a real high-level slide together, which is entitled FY 2010 Revenue Expenditure Reconciliation. The total anticipated revenue, okay, is $81,000 higher than the expenditures from the certified docket. And the reason those numbers don't match is because at the meeting, we vote on a range, and when the tax rate gets settled, it can deviate within that range. So there often, in every year, I think there probably has been a difference. This year, the difference was $81,961 and change. So I wanted to put that together to explain. And this documentation is pretty much the facts of what happened. I'm not sure if there's questions of why these numbers happened, but the Budget Committee had scrubbed these numbers significantly. And when we got to, we were looking at historical ones. Mr. Jubert put a lot of time into that, so on and so forth. And then we finally were handed this report, which ironically we thought was going to help the situation on the Budget Committee. And when Mr. Perry mentioned that we were going to have, this, we're using the wrong report, things looked like they were going to get better. But in the end, actually, there was another number that offset it. I remember distinctly the emotions of that calculation, and it came right back out to about the same number. So that's what happened. The numbers come out exact, and I just wanted to present that. I know the treasurer said he enclosed it. That's why I didn't bring copies tonight. But that is the answer to any differential between the anticipated revenue and expenditures. And that is exactly how we get to that 522,000 number and everything else. And this report actually outlines every single revenue account. So I just wanted to present that. And hopefully it answers questions. I haven't been in this building for 4 months or 5 months, and so I'm not sure what questions are revolving around this, but this is what happened, and this is what was voted on, and the numbers that come out, so.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Are you, on a large scale, advocating that we continue to use a detailed analysis of revenues?
For what purpose?
For budgetary, as we go through the process.
Well, I don't see any other way that you can. I mean, are you saying, should we continue to worry about $300 from dog licenses? And is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying detailed, which would include $300 from dog license, because I know in the past, the revenue estimate given to the Budget Committee, and this is distant past, by the way, was rather more broad brush.
Right.
And I subscribed to the more detailed approach, and I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't saying, yeah, that's a good idea all by myself. So
right.
I take it you think it's a good idea too.
Well, yeah, and I mean, what did we, if you read the charter says that we ought to be presented by some revenues, but we, and actually under the guidance from Jim, or recommendation, I should say, from Jim, we did our own analysis, and we looked at trends, and we looked at the economy fell off the cliff, and we did all that sort of thing. And we concluded our own numbers independently. And the only way for the committee to do that, especially where I didn't have any historical experience in that seat to do that, was to add up the numbers. I mean, there was no other way other than throwing a dart and saying, for the last 3 years, it's been 700K, so let's make it 700K. So yeah, it's definitely in the buildup. Now, what you put in the docket maybe is a separate question. But as far as how would one track this? Yeah, I think you have to go to detailed numbers and add them up. It's pretty simple. Yeah, so I would agree.
What it does is accurate. It throws off the expenditures and the revenue, and they should balance.
Well, why is that?
Just from a standpoint of accounting purposes.
Well,
and the bookkeeping. I mean, obviously, we don't have $81,000 more to spend because the expenditures are taken off the docket, the certified docket.
Well, I'd like.
But
go ahead.
if you look at the general fund, that's $81,000 more, and if everything turns out. I mean, there should be some maybe explanation on the account saying that it represents the
quote-unquote excess.
Exactly, excess from the, maybe at even the bottom, excess income, but it should not, it does not affect
Well, anticipated revenues, expenditures can be fixed, and that's pretty simple. I
Well, it
mean,
comes
we-
off the docket. It
Well, that's what I'm
comes off
saying.
the certified
Well, that's what I'm
docket.
saying, expenditures come off the docket. Anticipated revenues are guesses on every one of those accounts.
Sure.
And the guesses are balanced to the other one, and because there's a range, you're not gonna have an exact figure. And I can understand, I think that's the simplest way to say that, because you have a high and a low range that you do when you do your tax vote, you know, the numbers don't, at the end of the year, it's
Right,
still
and
kind of washes.
Maybe on our monthly reports, it should say that, because the range of income is done subsequent to the financial town meeting and based upon and it comes off, right off the certified
Well,
docket.
I would venture to say that every single year this town has been through this process for probably the last 30 years, these two numbers have not matched exactly. I mean, they never will. So the question is, how was it handled in the past, really, is the question. I mean, in the past, maybe it was 80,000 on the shy side, you know, because a penny here, a penny there at the final moments of the certification. So the question becomes, how was that handled in the past? I don't know. I've never been the treasurer in the past. I don't know how that was handled in the past, but this is no different. And this time we come out, you know, quotation mark excess, we may never see it because of the economy, but quote on, you know, $81,000. So,
It probably was just handled as year-to-date revenue. If everybody paid their taxes that were allocated, $81,000.
should show up, right.
If every one of those categories panned out to be.
Exactly.
what the
Exactly as
number was,
budgeted.
And that's
Then
not
that's
gonna,
what's-
and that's
No,
never.
No,
and
no,
that is
but-
never gonna
but-
happen, so, right. So, and the reason you do the range is because you have that uncertainty. I mean, there's no, well,
So-
I appreciate,
What I wanted
I
to do-
appreciate the reconciliation, I appreciate the numbers, you know,
What I
that
wanted
you're
to
showing what
do-
generate that.
Let me-
But I
let
think,
me-
you know,
let me
the
do-
nicer one to be see is last year, whether or not we were on target on all of our revenues. And those are the documents I think that are more important to the Budget Committee, is the accuracy of the prior year's revenue
Right.
forecast.
This will become the baseline, and how close were we, and we'll adjust
Right, and
come January.
last year's, right, if you took that and figured that out.
Right.
It gives you a much better baseline to work on the anticipated revenues in the.
Right.
Don, the reason why I've asked Mr. Karen here and wanted to present you this detail was this would be my charter, so to speak, in presenting financial statements on an ongoing basis. You will see his revenue numbers defined. These numbers will be my revenue numbers. This has, quote, become my certified revenue docket, such that when you see these in future reports, August, September, and as we go through the year, you will see revenues more than expenses, as they should be. We should not go in to any account and, you know, hide it. I'll use that word. We have to be transparent with all of our numbers, and in doing this exercise, now I have, quote, a charter to follow in putting into the budgeted column for the year 2009, 2010. That's all I have.
Yeah, and I'll back up Phil on that. I mean, absolutely, this table of 3 sheets with every single account with a number was the perfect world, ideal, this is what we're going with as a committee, and you can see it because the numbers came out exact off the levy vote. I mean, this is to the penny, to the dollar, what his baseline should be for the treasurer accounts, you know? So if we said $300 for dog licenses, when we have 150, he'll report, I guess, 50%, right? So these are the numbers, is all I'm trying to say.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we place the financial statements on file and we proceed to new business.
We're done, we don't have to, we're done with the item, we're moving on to new business. The new business, Mr. Burgundy from the school committee. Proposed changes to Rhode Island general law.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. President of the Council, I would like to ask you, I only put my name on the request to be on the agenda. Would you allow me to invite Mrs.
By all means, you can have any of your
Vice Chair
colleagues
of the
join you.
we are here to ask you to join us in opposition to the proposed legislation on binding arbitration on teachers' contracts. On August 25th, as a little brief which I supplied with my request to be on the agenda, states on August 25th, the school committee took a vote to officially oppose this legislation, and the vote was to support the opposition and 1 abstention. Our opposition to this particular proposed legislation is based on the fact that it is our belief that this legislation will not prevent what it's supposed to be doing, so it means prevent teachers from working to rule. 2, does not consider the legislated mandated cap on the taxes. 3, in our opinion, it will harm the students' welfare and academics. It will simply put a big burden on the taxpayers because through this arbitration we will be told how much we have to pay. It will also take away the it will take the power from local elected officials to decide about the biggest component and biggest financial component of our budget. In our opinion also, it will diminish the incentive of the teachers, through the teachers' union, to negotiate in good faith with the employers, which are the taxpayers. To provide some background information, at this point the binding arbitration is built into general laws, but the binding piece only applies to the language. It does not apply to any item which has any fiscal implications. The new legislation will make it binding also on fiscal issues. We do not question the role the teachers play in our school system. We do not question the very high expectations for their qualification, which is placed in front of them. We don't question their contributions, but at the same time, we have to face the fact that the teachers in Rhode Island are the 7th from the top in terms of the pay in real numbers. And if this is prorated based on average family income in the state of Rhode Island, we are in the top of the nation. So to some extent, what we can conclude is that system is not broken, so it means teachers in Rhode Island are not underpaid. And basically, as you know, there was a big change in the state's retirement system, which impacted the teachers. And it is general belief that at that time, this idea of binding arbitration was offered as a compensation for that change. So we are simply here to ask you to join us in this opposition. Pretty much many towns and municipalities are going to do exactly the same. At this point, to my knowledge, South Kingston, Newport, Middletown, at least those 3 I'm personally familiar with, already passed the resolutions in opposition to that particular proposed legislation. I don't know, Mrs. Black, anything else you can say?
I'd just like to say this is a very important issue. We've all read about it, pros and cons, we've seen it on TV. We have to look at all sides. We heard Dan Beasley come from the League of Cities and Towns and present his labor relation notes, and he said he didn't even want to look at what the General Assembly was showing him because he was against it. Then Mr. Burgundy and I went and spent Saturday morning up at the Rhode Island Association of School Committees with all the other cities and towns with Mr. Duffy and heard his side. Then Sunday, we heard Mr. Walsh from the NEA and then the American Federation of Teachers give their side. We have to really examine all of these. Now, I have the rough drafts of 2 of the laws, and the important thing we have to know is that both Representative Laughlin and Representative, I can't even think of his name, it's going to kill me, Jay Edwards, I just talked to him on the phone. They're on the House Committee of Labor, both of them are, so we can contact them about it. I talked to both of them about it, and I tried to reach Senator Palmer. But the things that things have to be considered are the interest and welfare, of course, of the students and the taxpayers. We always say both sides. The cities and towns' ability to pay, comparison of compensation to other cities and towns, a 30-50 cap. I can only speak to personally what we just went through as I looked and studied and found everything I could. We just went through, very public. You all supported us on the council. You made the amendment. It was wonderful. Of negotiations, a strike, mediation, arbitration, work to rule, a contract compliance. In my opinion, it fractured the town. It put councils against school committee, fathers against daughters, sisters against sisters. It was incredible. I couldn't believe it. People I was so shocked would say to me on one side or the other. And so then I said, well, they're going to vet this up there and talk about it, and let's hope they'll take time. They won't pass it very quickly. One of the recommendations of the school committee was to put it to the next session and really talk about not just pass it right away when they meet. So as I said, it hurt the town, it hurt the students. They can't get those things back with the contract compliance. And then I said, well, don't worry, because they'll put all those good things in. And then I said, wait a minute, we just went through this with 30-50. We went up, Mrs. Aruda, Mr. Rarick and I went up to see all the things in the state when they were vetting that with Piper Weed, the big panels. And they said, don't worry, we're going to have a funding formula. We're going to give you 50-50, like the First Act in the 80s gave 50-50, then 60-40, then we had the banking crisis in that one. This time they said they're going to do 50-50. And then they said, send us a bill for all your unfunded mandates, and we'll pay that back. The $350,000 bill, we've never seen a cent. Ms. Durfee was at the forum with Mrs. Piper. We remember when she said that. Send us a bill. So in other words, they passed a law, and I think it was a good law to protect the taxpayers, but other parts of the law they never even obeyed. So what might they do with this? They might pass something that looks good on these papers as we go through them, and then we'll say it's okay because they're going to do the 30-50, the ability to pay, and all of a sudden, we go to arbitration this time, and I said, I'm very comfortable with that, because other eyes on it, I don't mind. Everybody can look and see. But I said, thank God they can't tell us we have to pay a certain amount, because we didn't have it. What if they said, you have to pay this certain amount, we didn't have it, then we'd have to either sue the town or to cut programs. We all know all what we went through. So I'm very apprehensive about it, and I hope everybody just looks and studies and looks at all sides. Thank you.
If I can add something to this, our major concern, because of our charter, what we're supposed to do is to protect the students and protect the programs which we have. My big concern is what's going to happen. Arbitrators are lawyers. Arbitrators do not understand necessarily, they might understand and can be explained that these are mandated programs. But how is an arbitrator going to be able to judge the value of the music program in Tiverton or the Chinese language program in another community against giving teachers 1% raise? How this decision is going to be made? Obviously what's mandated is mandated, but different communities value different things which they have within their school system. And so this is going to be done purely based on numbers. I don't think this is good for students. I don't think it's good for the school system, and obviously it's not going to be good for the taxpayers. For this reason, we are here seeking your support in this opposition. And this support and opposition, obviously I cannot tell you how to do your business, but there are two aspects of this. One is obviously a resolution. But the second aspect, because we don't know when this is going to come in front of the committee and if there are going to be any hearings, but if such hearings take place, there is pretty much a consensus with all the communities that each community should come united in terms of bringing someone from the council, bringing someone from the school committee, and potentially school superintendent, and show up during the hearing potentially and in person express discontent with this particular legislation. So these are these two aspects. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Black, can I ask a question?
Please.
I mean, we're talking about looking at both sides of this issue. Are you for this resolution or against it?
I'm against binding arbitration.
You're for the resolution then?
Yes,
Correct. We
we took that vote at the school committee.
school committee took vote to officially oppose this legislation, proposed legislation on binding arbitration. We are just here to ask you to join us in this opposition.
I understand.
I guess what we have to realize too, is something, Sally, you had mentioned before, and you should expand upon it more, was maybe, it should have, this binding arbitration bill pass, that should you get to that point, that this arbitrator could in fact say, well, both sides of this budget, both municipal and schools, have not gone to the cap. Could they force you to go to the cap?
Well, that's the question I had. I know both sides worked so hard this year, the town and the schools was 1.48, the town was lower than that, cutting every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, we knew the debt service coming on. And then I said, since we did not come to the cap, could an arbitrator say then legally, we can go to the cap and you have to pay that to the teachers? I don't know, that was just a question I had, and that would really affect the town of Tiverton. I know a lot of towns are at the cap or maybe above it, so it wouldn't affect them, but it would affect Tiverton, and I wasn't sure, that was just a question I had.
It is, just to add to this, it is my understanding that this legislation does not include any provision for the cap. So, in this particular case, potentially, the decision could be made which exceeds the cap.
Right.
Can I ask
So
you a
anywhere,
question?
oh, I'm sorry.
No.
Go ahead. So anywhere else that this might already take place, binding arbitration already takes place in other communities or other states someplace, probably don't have to come under a cap.
Well, Dan Beasley, as you were here,
Yeah.
explained that when they went to Proposition 2.5, and I was working for it at the time, and I wondered, why didn't we feel the impact? And he told you why, because they
Yeah.
flooded the education side with money, and they put arbitration rules, strict rules on their arbitration. So they have the tools, as Mr. Boland talks about, they gave them the tools before they passed it.
Do you have, does anybody, Mr. Burgundy, do you have a copy of the act?
Yeah, we have.
I have the rough draft, there's only a rough draft.
I don't know, I mean, I certainly have not looked at a rough draft. And quite frankly,
Would you like to?
I'm not gonna look at it
Well, I
tonight,
mean, I'll
Sal,
show- I'll give it to you.
And the,
Okay.
so you're asking us to vote for a concept.
Right, exactly, just like the healthcare, there's no real,
Well, what is the bill? Show them what it is.
there's about 2,000 pages on it.
If we're voting just on a concept, and I recognize that this legislation on binding arbitration can have all sorts of limits in it. In my before life, among the things that I did was to go to hundreds of mediations, hundreds of arbitrations, binding arbitrations. And based on my understanding that we're really voting on a concept, let me give you my short analysis of binding arbitration. It's simply legal corruption. If you want to hear more, I'll be happy to talk to you about it later, Mrs. Black, but that's essentially what it is. I consider binding arbitration, as a lawyer who did it for more than 30 years, as corruption, nothing more than that. So I don't need any more arguments. You just have to give me the concept, and I will be happy to move in favor of this resolution. In fact, I'll make that motion based on the language. Now, we have A4 here. I don't think that we need all of the whereas clauses, but I have no trouble at all moving for the resolve as stated in A4, which is attached to the agenda.
I second that motion.
We have a motion and a second to pass this resolution in opposition to binding arbitration for teacher contract. Is there any further discussion?
Mr. President, I would suggest a few minor corrections. At the top, for example, it says city/town. We should scratch the city/. It's the town council that's evident. And wherever else it appears, that word, a city and that slash, I think should be removed. And in the further resolution, there'll be a further resolve. In addition to sending it to our town, state senators and state representatives, I think we also have a reason to send it to the Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate. They also are on our team, so to speak. And finally, the word "of" at the very end of that sentence should be deleted. Other than that, I'm in favor of the motion to oppose binding arbitration as a matter of law.
And I'll second those amendments then. Withdraw my own motion, which was based on this wording, and accept Mr. Costa's wording.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Well, only to say, I'm going to speak up now, is that I'm not certain that I can vote on this as a concept. I mean, I always like to support the school committee and what they do, but until I see the act,
I know.
you asked me to look at both sides of the issue. I've actually spent some time, I've gone online and tried stuff, and I've looked at the Connecticut situation, and I'm looking at a statement from the Superintendent of Schools Association. Now, what I tried to do, this was in 2004, and it talks about the act was fine-tuned in the early 1990s to make sure that the arbitrators look at the wealth characteristics and ability of the municipality to afford the settlement. Binding arbitration does work, and for the most part, labor relations between teacher unions and school boards have been pretty good. It goes on to say that on salaries, by and large, the unions have prevailed, but on insurance benefit issues, the
Yeah, I
towns
have
and
that.
cities. You have that?
I have that, yeah.
And it just, I like to vote on things when I see an act.
Right,
If
I
the act is
understand,
terrible,
yeah.
I'd be willing to
Say
vote
no.
and comment on it. I'm just not gonna vote for this as a concept.
Okay.
Please
fair
understand
enough.
that.
Yeah.
I would move the question.
No problem. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries 4-2, or 5-2.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Council Leonard, use of and disposition of Ranger Nonquit School.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My purpose in putting this on was just to open a discussion. We have, as everybody knows, we have the two schools that come back to the town. In probably 8 to 10 weeks, Mr. Gonzalez is going to be putting a memo out to all of his department heads, starting to talk about budget for next fiscal year, incredibly as that may seem. So I thought it might be time that we start thinking about the different alternatives for the use of both the Ranger School and Nonquit School. I have no precise view on what we should do with it, other than to say that we should maximize the value of those properties to the town, and however we do that is open to discussion. I think a reasonable first step would be to get an appraisal of the property so we know what we're talking about. But even that is not necessarily etched in stone. So my purpose in putting this on the agenda was to spark a discussion about how best to go forward. For purposes of keeping the discussion in order, I would make a motion that we put out a request for proposals for appraisals of the Ranger and Nonquit School.
If we do that, I would like to suggest too that aside from the value, but what would be the fair market rental in case somebody came along and didn't want to include that as part of a request for proposals.
And I would accept Madam Durfee's modification to my motion.
I will second that.
And I do think the second part of, is to schedule a workshop to hear public suggestions for utilization, maybe a good idea.
What's that?
Did we get a vote on this motion?
No. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Now, I would come back at Ms. Durfee's suggestion and make a motion that we schedule, I don't know whether it's appropriate to be a workshop. A workshop seems to be a good format, I guess, but somehow seek active public input as to what would be good uses for those properties. So I'll, for purposes of a motion, I'll call it a workshop. And to be scheduled with the input of Madam Clerk in terms of our meeting workload.
The next regular workshop wouldn't come until November 30th. So that might be okay.
That's a little late.
If we have an input hearing, I'll try to do an advertisement.
Well, the motion has not been seconded yet, but I see no reason for a special meeting or a workshop. We spent an hour discussing the financial report. It would not take us anywhere near that long. Then listen to people's suggestions or proposals. I say schedule it on a regular session.
Would it be the sense of the group that I should just put an agenda item on the next meeting? Something about seeking, with an understanding with our council president that we have a time limit, dangerous as that is.
I think the first thing you need to do is you need to advertise for input
Okay.
and give people time. I think just putting on the agenda is not going to attract enough attention, because I'm not sure, how many people are actually going out and looking at our agenda to come to a meeting. I think we really need to publicize that on a particular meeting night, we're going to take input on the uses of the Ranger and Nonquit School, and advertise that at least for a couple of weeks before, we do put it on our agendas.
November may not be too long.
That's what I'm
because,
thinking. I think by the time we advertised it,
Get appraisals and.
yeah, we'd have some better ideas. If we're going to go the route, we're going to send out an RFP, we're going to see what it's going to cost us to get that accomplished. Maybe the workshop on November 30th, at the end of November, is probably a good time frame, seeing we're, midway through September.
Yep.
I mean, but it gets the buzz generated about town that we're looking for this input,
Yeah.
and gives people time to facilitate in their own minds what uses could be, or...
Yep. And I think that's fine. I think that's the primary objective, is to make sure we get the best use possible, whatever that may be, including rental.
So then why don't we, on our 30th workshop, put that down as an item to have on that evening? And we'll try to get some publication about it, get some media buzz.
Doesn't the having of a workshop or a special meeting require a vote of the council? Or have we lost that power?
Well, I think we've kind of established that extra Monday in the months where there's a fifth Monday, we utilize it for a workshop. So I think we've kind of...
Necessary or unnecessary, I take it.
Well, no, if necessary, but I mean, if there's an item to be discussed, then that's the time, if you want, we'll make a motion to have a workshop on the 30th.
He's already made a motion, and it's not been seconded.
Well, no, he didn't, he talked about scheduling it at a meeting.
Yep, that's right.
And we talked about with the term, and that might not work out, so the workshop may be better.
And in that, I will go back and make a motion to, on the November 30th date, schedule a workshop to seek input from the public as to the best utilization of Ranger and Nonquit School. So there's a motion.
There's a second to that. Further discussion?
Yeah, I'm going to stick with my statement that this is easily handled on the regular agenda. That's my opinion.
Okay.
A little efficiency and effectiveness, I think, goes a long way.
Okay.
Anyone else wishing to be heard on this matter? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain, I can't figure out what position to take, to be honest.
You come into a workshop. It's been decided.
Regardless of your position, you'll be there.
Hannibal was kind of convinced.
Moving on, Councilor Roderick, discussion regarding the CDBG grants process.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. My question is regarding the CDBG, is that Church Community apparently is the one that has been processing and requesting our CDBG funds. And I was a little surprised when I found out, not that I have anything against Church Community, but in most cities and towns, they seek their own. They plan them themselves, and if I'm not mistaken, it's usually the town or city planner that requests these funds. And I just thought it was just a little strange that we weren't seeking those funds ourselves, but allowing a second party to seek those funds. And, based on the way the funds broke out, it seemed that the second party got the bulk of the CDBG funds. So I was just wondering why that process is that way, and in the past, did the town do it?
I think as long as I've been here, Church Community has been doing that, and I think part of the reason was we didn't have a planner up until only a few years ago. So maybe it's time to look at, the process and how we might want to proceed. Seeing that block grant has just been awarded, we have time to research and see if there's a better way of handling this that would be more beneficial to the town of Tiverton. And I would have no problem with asking the town planner to look into this matter and see how other cities and towns, handle this and what their roles are.
And if you need it in the form of a motion, I will make that a motion that we request that the town planner look into the process.
Helps
But I
that
would
we're not.
suggest that the town administrator.
Right, the town administrator. Yes, the town administrator.
I would second the motion.
Well, make a motion and then give us the formal
Make a motion that the town administrator look into the process for CDBG funds and whether that can be handled within the administration.
And you have seconded that, Mr.
I'll
Costa?
second it, yes.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's unanimous. Town Administrator Peter Monas, RIDOT's signage for Stafford and Crandall roads.
Councilors, last May, I indicated that there was going to be an evaluation by the Rhode Island Department of Transportation to have a bike route or bike path along Crandall and Stafford roads. They have concluded their investigation of it, and they've come up with a shared road type situation, and they are willing to go forward with that as long as we are in agreement with it. And I have received several emails from people in the town who are enthusiastic about this. So I would ask that the council vote as to whether or not they are in favor of the signage along both those roads.
I don't mind the Crandall and Stafford being used as a shared road with bikers. However, if bikers could use some decorum on the roads, instead of riding 2 and 3 abreast on Crandall Road and Stafford Road, it becomes very dangerous where cars are starting to go onto the other side of the road in order to make way for those bikers that are riding 2 and 3 abreast. And that's way beyond the breakdown lane or whatever you want to call that space on the side of the road. So, I think that there needs to be some kind of signage with those kinds of rules, you know, I mean, if it's gonna be a shared road, I would think that those rules would be,
Single file.
yeah.
But the problem is that there are enforcement issues, once again, and it really, believe it or not, if bicycles are acting inappropriately, it's really the police department who should be cited.
No, but they
No,
can't be
I'm not, they're not everywhere, but I mean, I think if a biker got cited once in a while, then maybe it's smarten up, because I agree with you, there's nothing worse when they're riding, you know, three abreast, you know,
They won't get out of the way.
and most of the bike groups that ride do have decorum and will signal each other and go into single file when somebody's behind.
Those bike
But,
groups
no,
are
no, no,
bad.
some of them, no, some of them are getting really bad. But I'm reading this, and it says here that is of the opinion that a road should be signed as a bike route only if it is directly connected to a bike path. And he's agreed that to have DOT to post and install signs that will mark these roadways as a shared road. Well, Stafford and Crandall don't go to a bike path, do they?
No.
Well, so, I mean, so,
Refers to, may I speak about that?
yeah, please.
Mr. Church refers to bike routes. There's three categories.
Okay.
First of all, there's a bike path, which I've been trying to push in town
Yes.
for many years, down by the tracks. And then the town council can take some action on that if they really want that action to go that way. The second part, or the second type of bike facility is a bike route, which is on a road, basically.
Yeah.
Shared road. And so that's what I really was pushing for, a shared road on Crandall, because it's more, it's safer to ride on Crandall and Stafford Road than it is on Main Road over here, because there is a suitable right-of-way, and the power engineer did a study on this, and they came out positive that it would be suitable for a bike route. But Mr. Church, looking it over, taking another look at it, said he'd rather have a bike route signage on a road that ties directly to a bike path, which this doesn't occur at this time. But he said he would be willing to put signage for a shared road. And basically, this will be for a safety factor to make awareness for drivers and bicyclists that they should, you know, use courtesy on the road for both travelers. And it's, you don't have the maps, Jim. I brought some maps today, but it's just a simple sign. It says, we can grab one and show you what the sign will look like, and it's very appropriate for the highway. It's really a safety factor. And again, Don, you're right, and both parties got to be responsible. When you see a bicyclist on the road, you should beware of the precautions that you should take. And the bicyclists shouldn't be hogging the road. They should be sharing the road in the breakdown lane. We have good people and bad people, and we should be all basically good people. It's just that we got to have the right attitude. Now, I don't know if you want to really see this particular sign, but there is a sign that might be, or there's an icon on the bike path map there that might be what the state might put up for a suitable sign for a shared road.
Can I ask how many signs will be put up along
It'll be-
Stafford Road and Crandall Road?
I think about 6 signs.
6 signs?
Around that range. It's not going to be that many signs. Just to give an idea that people, to be aware that not only bicyclists, there's people I notice on Stafford Road particularly, because that's where I live. I see kids and bicyclists, but I haven't seen, really a group. And there's people that have been running on the breakdown lane. So it's not only for bicyclists.
I don't see those groups on Stafford
Can
as
I
much as you
please
do on...
finish?
I'm sorry, I didn't know you...
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, I haven't finished. I got 2 or 3 questions to ask. The second question is, does this mean we're going to have a lined path on both sides of these roads?
It's in the it's already, they should be riding in the breakdown lane.
Going both directions?
Well, there's a breakdown lane on either direction, yes.
Okay. Let me ask what problems we'll be curing by going along with this plan. What problems do we have now that will go away?
Well, it's just another safety reminder that people, besides, one particular aspect has mostly been driving automobiles to use the road, but more and more people are taking bikes on the road, and more and more people are jogging on the road. It's just to, like a reminder, say an exit sign, that you tell me, oh, there's an exit sign there in case it is an emergency. This sign here is give you the public awareness on either side, if you're walking or riding or jogging or driving, that more than one type of transportation mode is taking place on this road.
I travel the roads back and forth, north and south in this town, and unless somebody's conducting a race, you occasionally see a bicyclist. Very
Well,
rarely, I might say.
If you travel Crandall Road a lot,
Every
you
day.
will see those groups of cyclists at all times and at any time of the day. And they come out of Narrow Avenue, they come out 2 and 3 abreast, 4 abreast out of Narrow Avenue and cut right across. They'll come right out of King Road and go straight off onto Crandall. It's become really a hazard.
But those are when they're having a bicycle
No,
event.
no, they're practicing and they're just clubs that just go out cycling.
We have the good fortune or misfortune, however you want to view it, of being known as an area. They run a 100-mile race out of Tiverton High School every year called the Flattest Century in the East, which boasts how flat the roads are in this area. It is a mecca for bicyclists. You can go almost any time and find cars when the school's closed, parked at the high school where they start. Brayton Road, which is a terrible road for them to be on. I'd like to have roads for them so that maybe they stay off some of the roads that are really inappropriate for them because, King Road, Brayton Road, if they took Crandall Road and Boogamosh, probably Boogamosh is too much of a hill, so it's easier to go in Brayton. But, putting a sign that shares a road is
Cycling has
not,
become a big sport.
big sport.
And why don't we, if we agree to a shared road,
Yeah.
they're gonna be sharing the roads, whether we.
Whether we put a sign up or not, I think it's really notifying motorists to expect to see bicycles on that
Yeah,
particular
and also
road.
Joanne's point of saying single file or.
You can't pass that yet because they're gonna do,
Yeah, but
we got speed
I think
limits
that's just
and not everybody abides by
recognizing
them.
the inevitable. We have a whole group, my neighbors, they are out 50 mile, 35 miles on Sundays. Westport, they're all over the place.
This is a mecca for biking. It's a great, it's a scenic area. There are so many rides that can encompass.
So,
those
Well, then-
to move this along,
Yes.
I'll make a motion that we designate it or authorize the administrator to communicate with the DOT that signage be put up for a shared road. And if they could put some signage up on single file or take care of it, that'd be great too. But that's the motion.
I'll second that motion, even though I strongly agree with Ms. Aruda, because just this past weekend, I was involved in a bicycle swarm where they were 3 abreast, and my goodness sakes, they weren't going to give an inch.
He's right.
And there's, tractor trailer.
Tom, tell the boys, 2 abreast, pull them over. No, really, it's, technically, when they ride the roads, and Narragansett Bay Wheelman, who published this pamphlet you have, teach at least their members that they're supposed to obey the rules of the road. So they can be ticketed as well as an automobile who's not doing what he's supposed to do, whether it be hand signals, whether it be, endangering, riding inappropriately. So, they can be. If they went on a road that isn't supposed to have bicycle traffic like 88, they'd get stopped. So,
Do we have rules of the road that are going to allow your officers to stop these bicyclists from traveling 2 abreast or more?
Bicycles are required to obey all rules of the road, and again, drive with traffic and obey signals and stop at stoplights, etc.
Okay, but my proposition is that there are no rules of the road that apply to this particular case in the town of Tiverton.
Well,
They
they,
gotta stay in their shared, they gotta stay in their shared lane.
correct. It's
Okay, so
safety,
there.
obviously. It's for their benefit themselves. They're kind of vulnerable there on a bicycle versus a car, obviously, so.
If you find a problem with this, the first thing you're going to say is, I don't have a law or an ordinance or anything that I can charge them with. What do you want me to do with these people?
I will make an effort to point out particular facts. I'll research that.
driving to endanger.
You can, you know what, you can be responsible, regardless, I won't make light of it. The fact if someone does something with a bicycle and causes a problem, someone's injured, they can be held responsible. If not criminally, it's definitely civilly.
We have a motion and a second to,
Can I speak?
yes.
As Mr. Leonard mentioned, there was a lot of bicycles around the south end of town last week, or this weekend. There was a cop station at the intersection of Pond Bridge Road and Main Road there, stopping traffic so they could come out and keep going.
It was
And
probably
they
the
were
century.
running 2 and 3 address. They were apparently 1,900 of them, according to one of them. There's nothing big enough in Tiverton any longer to accommodate these parking. They parked in Dartmouth, apparently. And going down the road past my driveway there, again, they were going 2 or 3 abreast. There was cars trying to get by them, cars coming the other way. The sergeant standing at Pond Bridge Road, he was not able to supervise how they were riding at that time. So I see that, and a lot of time on Saturdays, we get lesser numbers going down Pond Bridge Road. They come down Sepauwett, I guess, or from East Road or someplace else. There's also apparently a problem. We're getting all of these bicycles coming into town for these various rides and things. There's another problem with them into some of our recreation areas, Weedemore Woods. Apparently, they're tearing up the paths up there to some extent, at least according to my wife. She says they come through those paths sometimes when you're walking up there without any
But those
looking
are
out.
different, I think, Mr. Hart, those are trail bikers.
Those are trail bikes. So there's another, so we have a couple different types of riders in this town, and Tiverton is becoming very
Just Sunday we had the run.
here. Now, I thinking about it, is there some way we can control them and make some money on this thing? Get some revenue out of this? Is there possibilities, if there's 1,900 bikers coming into town, did they pay anything as a fee license to have this thing coming through to?
I think that's, Dick, this is a different topic. We're talking about some signs on Crandall and Stafford Road. The rest of the bike issues, you know.
Needs to be studied.
Yeah,
It needs to be
definitely.
thought a lot about what's, this is starting in Tiverton, and it should be
Well, why don't you come up with some
studied right now.
suggestions for the council? Wouldn't that be?
Well, Mr. Lambert and I had
Bikes over Bristol where they have beautiful.
yeah, they have some bike
bike
paths, and if there's any way we can generate some money from these bicycles to create bike paths.
Okay,
and-
wait.
and better
Dick,
take
Dick,
care of it.
this is the signage on Crandall and Stafford Road is the issue here tonight, and I think they're different.
think it
They're gonna
should
use
be-
these roads whether we put a sign or not. I think the signage is
So not to
just...
encourage them, I say.
Wait, that's right. It's not to encourage them, I think,
Don't
it's to let
encourage
everybody
them.
know.
Until you get
Mr. Bellucci.
regulations.
I'd like to just say one thing, Mr. Chairman. If you've noticed driving up Main Road, they've painted a 4-foot lane for the bikes. In other words, from the gutter, there's a white line, and that white line is out 4 feet. I think that has to be looked at for these 2 roads also. Those lines kind of guide the bikes as to where they're supposed to go. And unless you have that fog line, that white 4-inch solid line, 4 inches off the shoulder, the bikes are going to continue to go in the driving lanes. They're going to be all over the place, but it gives a designated alley for the bikes, which is supported by the signs when they say, you know, share the road, bikes, this is where you go. And if you look at them signs, it even has a little logo of bikes going down that 4-foot lane. So I just think that has to be discussed along with the signage for that road also.
As regard to the lanes are already marked on Crandall and Stafford Road. There is a breakdown line on the right-hand side on each of those roads. So
But that's more than 4 feet.
It gives them their designated...
Main Road is a different story.
Okay.
I'm talking
We have-
about Crandall and Stafford Road.
We have a motion and a second to notify DOT that we're in support of the shared road signs for Stafford and Crandall Road. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? 6-1.
I can't vote against it. They won't vote for me next November.
Mr. Belucci, you should have just
I
stayed
could
there.
save you some time, but I recommend that we adopt your proposal to a recycling fee, $15 for the disposal of a couch and $10 for a stuffed chair.
I second it.
We have to advertise. The motion is to advertise for a public hearing to amend the fees. So, the motion set a date.
I'll second the motion.
For the second meeting in October.
Advertise the second meeting in October to hear the public hearing for the amended fees to include the fee for the couch and the stuffed chair.
So as soon as we can.
Okay. Advertise it for as quick as possible. We have a motion and a second to go to public hearing on that issue. Further discussion, seeing none, all those in favor?
Thank you.
Town Administrator, announcements, comments, and questions.
On Thursday, September the 24th, between 9 and 12 a.m., there's going to be a flu clinic at the senior center. This is for regular flu vaccine only and not the H1N1 vaccine. That will come at a later date, hopefully. January of 2010, the police department is planning a Citizens Police Academy class. It's going to be one night a week for 10 weeks, and there will be more details to follow as we get closer. The Juvenile Hearing Board has been very successful. They've heard about 2,000 cases at this point, and we have received positive feedback from both parents, police officers, and young people themselves.
Check that number.
2,000?
That number. Maybe.
Did I say 2,000?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I meant 2 dozen.
Oh. I was thinking like, wow.
Yeah, that DOZ looks like 3 zeros. My God, I would say we're in trouble. I thought Tiverton was a nice town.
I thought we were going back to the financial reports there for a minute.
Well, it's getting late. The next item. We have 40 new homes in progress in this town. We have 40 building permits in
The
progress.
building permits are up, according to the report.
Mhm.
I was surprised.
We have had 85 tax appeals for abatements. We have resolved 42 of them and working on the rest, and the 42 have at this point produced $51,600 in tax abatements. We have sent out 1,483, and I read that slowly, delinquent notices to taxpayers on the first quarter delinquent payments. We have, at this point, we have 96 properties on the tax sale list for this coming year. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Council announcements, comments, and questions. Okay, Town Solicitor.
Yes, one item for public. This, handing out to you a copy of a filing on behalf of the town of Tiverton and the town of Bristol with the United States Coast Guard, the captain of the port. As you know, at the end of July, the Coast Guard approved the transit plan for Weaver's Cove, their revised plan for the LNG tankers for the what they're calling the offshore berth in the middle of Mount Hope Bay. So we filed our appeal of that and request for reconsideration, which is the first step, with the captain of the port, who's the one who issued the letter of recommendation. Fall River also filed one, Somerset filed one, the state of Rhode Island. The Attorney General, although they had initially said they weren't, it turned out they filed one as well. So several of us have filed that with the Coast Guard. and this is just a copy for you, together with the acknowledgement response from the solicitor. And just for your information, I was at the U.S. Court of Appeals for the First Circuit last week for the hearing of oral argument on the appeal of the earlier decision of the United States District Court in connection with Rhode Island Coastal Resources Management Council. And I will discuss my views on that in executive session.
Thank you. Okay, now time to enter into executive session.
I'll make a motion to go into executive session pursuant to 4246-5A1 personnel matters.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion, seeing none. All those in favor?
And to stay in executive session to discuss litigation pursuant to 4246-5A2.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion, seeing none. All those in favor?
And to remain in executive session in 4246-5A6.
All those in favor? We're now in executive session.